So yeah, I don't see any audience, but at least you guys can hear me now. So I'm Jonathan. I work at the Research Hub Foundation in the SciComs group, and basically the Research Hub Foundation is dedicated to accelerating the pace of scientific research through publishing and funding science. Research Hub works like a Reddit for science, and I'm very much dedicated to the mission of decentralizing the publishing process. And I think having such a Reddit style forum is the best way to do it. So I'm really excited to work with them, and it has been a great experience. Very smart, intelligence people there trying to solve the issue of how we decentralize publication. We use a token to reward those uh, who do the work, basically the authors and the peer reviewers. And today I wanted to dedicate the session to the theory of decentralized publishing because I think the product is good, but what is also important is that we have a theoretical solution of the issue, just like Bitcoin was at first a theoretical solution and then was being applied. So I divided the session into three parts, but somehow this is confusing now because I don't see the audience. So let's go first into the first part, which would be the introduction of my own thinking about this issue, where I would guide you into what I think scientific consensus algorithms can do and should do, and then what is the key problem that we have to overcome. Then the second part was supposed to be a discussion, but since I don't see you, I don't think we can pull that off. And then the third part would be to define some key objectives based on this discussion. But I guess I sort of have to freestyle this, and since you didn't hear me in the beginning, we are probably also going to run out of time. So, yeah, basically, what is the like the reason why we could use blockchain to decentralize scientific publishing? And I think the first intuition that we have when we read the Bitcoin white paper, for example, we understand that there are certain similarities between how blockchains work and what is desirable for scientific publishing. So some of the qualities that blockchains have, like the permissionlessness, the censorship resistance, which makes everything transparent if somebody's tampering with the record, and then lastly, the anonymous character, are really desirable for a scientific system because we want to be able to say whatever we think is right without it having to be attached to our personal identity so that we can have free speech. And then we don't want anybody to tamper with the record later on and change what has been said. Are you, are you speaking to me, Victor? So, yeah. Then in this, basically, what this allows, these three properties to me, is free speech or anti-dogmatism, so that those who hold the current dogmatic position don't have the power to censor the ones that don't have the position yet. And I think there's a similar mechanism at the bottom of what is scientific publishing and what is blockchain. So in a blockchain, we start off with a bunch of unconfirmed transactions and then we order them into blocks to come to a consensus on what where what money is at what time. And in the scientific record, we have a lot of preprints or unconfirmed papers, so to say, and then we order them into journals, which bring them out in sort of like a block every so and so often. And I think that this parallel can be abused and used to actually keep track of the scientific consensus at any given time. And the problem here, though, is how do we come to a consensus? So basically, how do we trans- validate transactions? How do we decide what goes into the journal? And what are the incentives for us to stay aligned on the scientific mission and keep the blockchain alive, so to say? Yeah. So initially, my thoughts were to have a discussion with you guys about this. Now, we don't really have that opportunity because I don't have an option to see an audience and a stage. So I was going to take notes during this discussion, but I don't think we're going to have a discussion. So I'm a bit lost here. But I will just take you through my thinking on it. Okay. So basically, I think the questions that we have to raise here are how could transactions be confirmed? Classically, this has been done through peer review. One way to do this would be to have peer reviewers assess papers and put all of this on the blockchain, give them a pseudonymous identity with a public key and a private key, where they can affirm that they have reviewed it without revealing their own identity. That's one way to think of it. Another way to think of transactions as being actually confirmed is if there has been a replication of the study that was published. And another one would be crowd voting, where you could have an upvote, downvote sort of system to decide what is actually valuable content and what is less valuable content. And here we could have opened the stage and talked about multiple alternatives and how to pull them off, or what are the benefits of each one. But since we cannot do this, I will just move on and talk about the next question, which is what goes into a block. So we might have valid transactions, papers that have scientific merit and are solid theoretically, but then there might be different, or not theoretically, but let's say empirically, but there might be different interpretations of the same data. So we have experiments in quantum physics, and then we have to interpret them. And in the Copenhagen interpretation, we don't have many worlds, but in the many worlds interpretation, we have many worlds. So there is a way of coming to different opinions based on the same data. And in the block, we would have to kind of be able to disagree. So the consensus would not be a unified consensus where everybody thinks the same based on the same data, but actually we still have the possibility of differences in opinion. And I was curious to explore here the issues that are at stake and how this could be done. Only without an audience, this is not really going to be possible. And then the next thing I think is important are the incentives, because the parallel to the blockchain is if you have the unconfirmed transactions, those which put them into the block, so that these are the peer reviewers and the editors of journals, they should be rewarded, and they basically need to carry the responsibility of keeping the content honest. So the question would be, how should rewards work? Like, should an editor be rewarded more than a peer reviewer who only reviewed a single paper? Should we get rid of the editor function completely and just have the peer reviewer? Those are interesting questions. And the next one would be, who is paying? So basically, in Bitcoin, nobody's really paying. The money just comes out of nowhere, basically, and it has value because you can share it between each other. Is this something that we could implement in the scientific publishing world too, where it's sort of like basically like a gas fee to get your paper reviewed and enter into the scientific consensus, so that basically those which the authors are paying to get into the chain, just like they are now with the journals? Or should the audience pay for reading it, which would go against principles of open access? So I thought there would be interesting conflicting uh, yeah, values here, or goals that we could have debated. Um, Now I don't think we are going to do this, so let's move on. Um, I think defining the key objectives um, would have been fun, but it's not going to be possible now. So I will just say what I think is the most important one, and I think the most important one is really to have basically have free speech. Sorry, this I think is the key to allow scientists to speak their mind and not end up confirming to what is politically correct. I think this is my most valuable and most important quality. I'll just keep it to that, since this is a sort of a freestyle and I have to deal with this now. Then, if you have made it so far, thank you actually for dealing with this on the fly approach. And then let's round it off. Basically, this is how we do it on Research Hub. We are using crowd voting to surface interesting papers to the top, and the community can decide through their upvotes. Basically, every individual can give credit to a paper and say that they think this is an important paper that should surface to the top and be read also by others. And you can also downvote it if you disagree. And through this mechanism, we can surface interesting literature to the top more quickly. People can review preprints and share them. and we have bounty mechanisms to incentivize people to review papers. You can ask questions through the bounty mechanism, and this is pretty much what we do. And I would encourage you guys to check it out if you're interested in decentralized publishing. Take a look, and even if you're not interested in solving the issue, if you're just interested in reading good literature, this is a way to find interesting papers quickly, share your own thoughts, and connect with other researchers in your domain, and even across domains. So then basically you can follow us, you can come to our Discord if you're interested in solving the same issues of decentralized publishing and help us out. You can go to Research Hub website, you can go to the foundation website if you like. Follow the foundation on Twitter, follow Research Hub on Twitter.